Hello, my favorite book fans. Let me ask you this. You guys know the story of Snow White, right? Most of us have seen the Disney animated classic, or you've probably watched variations of the live action versions, and they all draw inspiration on that animated Snow White classic. So today, I want to rewind and continue down the Disney book path. Recently, I reviewed Poor Unfortunate Soul. And if you guys haven't seen that, please go check it out. It's a pretty good book. Now, that was book 3 in the series. And I realized after reading that book that I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it so much that I want to take a step back and I want to start at book 1. So today, I want to give you guys my honest review on the book, The Fairest of Them All by Serena Valentino. As I said before, this is book 1 in the series. Now, sure, I've only read 2 of the books so far, and obviously not in order. As you guys know, I reviewed the third one first. But after reading the first book, I'm here to tell you I do think that the order matters. I highly recommend you reading this book series in chronological order, the way that it was written. Characters are introduced that go along with the plots of these books, and what I found was really interesting is how the author has woven the Disney villain universes together. So that's the main reason why I'm recommending reading them in order, because all the books seem to flow together. The plot and the characters from one book are carrying over into the other, and the characters are mentioned very heavily. If you don't like spoilers, and you guys know I don't, I would recommend reading them in order so you don't ruin it for yourself. So, book 1, as I mentioned at the start, it covers the story of Snow White, but this book is from the evil queen's perspective. Interestingly enough, she's never given a name in the book that I could tell. I literally couldn't find it anywhere. She's just called Queen or the Queen. And it does cover her life before she becomes queen, although very, very briefly. It covers her marriage to the king and then her descent in the book's second half. It does provide context, and I do feel like it enriches the Disney classic with what I would call a behind the scenes detail from the villain's point of view specifically. There were so many things I loved about this book. I recommend it to you immediately if you love the original story of Snow White, because you're going to really appreciate what this story adds to the storyline overall. But the number one reason why I loved this book, it humanized the evil queen. It gave her a backstory, and that was fantastic. Her backstory and the reasons behind her vanity made her seem real. You could really picture and follow along with what was happening to her and see her breakdown. And there were so many turns in the book where I genuinely felt sympathy for her and for all that she had been through. This book really breathed life into why she's known as the evil queen, not just simply labeling her a villain. The author gave thought into that character and painted a picture that was easy to see how she became the evil queen. Her character was very well thought out, and it was also very well developed. I give her a 10 out of 10 just in character development. It was very nicely done. I also enjoyed this book though because I know the plot and the story are carrying throughout other books too. I love that all the books are connected and all of the Disney characters seem to know each other in some fashion. To me, that makes the story logic make sense and also more enjoyable to follow it when it weaves through so many characters of the Disney universe together. So that's making me really look forward to reading more books in this series because I'm very intrigued by how they connect and I want to see how all the characters know each other. I also want to see how they interact with each other. That's been very interesting to see the snarkiness, the attitude, what they think of all the other characters. I'm very interested to see the opinions of all the characters from the villain's perspective. This author's approach, I think, is really original. This ties in with the first reason why I said I liked the book. She humanized the evil queen. And let's be honest, if I'm honest here, Disney fairy tales are a bit dated. Don't you think? It's really cookie cutter. I mean, they meet, they fall in love, evil meets its doom, and everyone lives happily together, in the end of the book. Her take on the villain characters is definitely dark. I'm not denying that, but I really appreciate it. In my opinion, she breathes life into a very outdated storyline that doesn't really hold up to today. She's making it interesting again by giving you the story of Snow White that you already know and showing you an entirely different perspective. It's really, really refreshing. On the flip side of that, though, towards the end of the book, I did find myself hating the evil queen. I thought she had her moments where she gave into temptation and she abandoned her morals, and I found that to be incredibly disappointing that she was so easily swayed. I definitely became more invested in the evil queen's character than I thought I would, and maybe that's why that ended up bothering me so much. But I suppose this was probably had to happen, right? Knowing what we know, we really can't love the evil queen. I mean, she's evil, right? It's literally in her name. I will say this, though. I thought the ending was really satisfying. The conclusion of the story left me with an unexpected smile, and it was a really sweet touch on a story that was really heavily about loss and descending into madness. But my one negative mark on these books, you guys, are expensive. The pacing on this book is excellent. I read this one in under 3 hours, and I'm a pretty fast reader, but this book is small. Let's be real. The fact that I read it in under 3 hours and it was $18, a bit too much for me on the price point. This book would be a great ebook read, or maybe even pick it up from the library if you only plan on reading it once. Though I do think it does have some great reread value. I bet you I will read it again. I think the fact that it's based on a Disney classic, I'll probably read this for enjoyment again. But for the rating, my favorite part, I'm going to give this book 3 hearts. I did find myself thinking about this book the next day, and that's one of the things I consider an indication of a good book. However, what I just said, the price point, I'm not crazy about that. It's not great. I also think that the length of this book is a bit too short, especially for that much money. Also, the pacing of this book is very quick, and I do think that that does skew the balance between tension and relief. It was a lot of doom and gloom for maybe a good 75% of the book. And even though this book was very descriptive and it made the world that she was describing very exciting, in that way it was great. But it was really hard to stay engaged when the book felt like it just dropped off of a cliff in the happiness department and just did a free fall for 3/4 of the whole book. But tell me, what you guys think? Would you guys read a story from the villain's point of view if it's a Disney character that you know? Is that something that you'd find interesting? The next book in this series is The Beast, which obviously covers Beauty and the Beast storyline. Let's continue to immerse ourselves in the Disney universe and see what happens. Off to the next one. I'll see you soon.